Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Can Mel hear us? Okay, all right. Good morning and welcome to Personnel Committee on this glorious morning, the 28th of January 2026. I'm your chair for today's meeting, Councillor Eleanor Rylance. I would like to welcome everybody joining us via hybrid and also anybody watching the live stream. We're now going to start by doing a roll call of committee members, and please advise at the same time whether you have any interest to declare, please. Handing over to Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. Can I start with you, Chair? Councillor Eleanor Rylance.
I am present and I have no interest to declare. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor John Loudon. Morning, John.
Morning, Debbie. I'm present. I have no declarations of interest.
Thank you very much. I know that Councillor Arnott's joining us shortly, so I'll move on to Councillor Kevin Blakey. Good morning.
Morning, Debbie. Present and no declarations.
Moving on to Councillor Tim Dumper. Good morning, Tim.
Morning. Good morning, Debbie. I'm present, no declarations. The only declaration I have has nothing to do with interests, but I've been forbidden on register number 403 from entering my my agenda here on the iPad. Not sure why.
We'll take that up after the meeting, shall we? I'll see if I can resolve that for you. I think I've got some IT duties when the meeting's finished, Chair. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Moving on to Councillor John Heath. Morning, John.
Morning, Debbie. I'm present.
Moving on to Yehudi. Good morning.
President, the only declaration I have is that the space between John and me is not because we've quarreled, but just to leave room for our egos not to clash.
Thank you very much. Duly noted. Moving on to Councillor Eileen Rowe. Good morning, Eileen.
Morning, Debbie. Present, no declaration.
Thank you very much. And moving on to our leader, Councillor Paul Arnott. Good morning.
Well, yes. Playing the role of Councillor Rowe, Councillor Arnott, present, no interest. Thank you.
Right. Debbie is just going to... Have you done everybody else, Debbie? I think you have, haven't you? Okay, all right. So moving on to agenda item 1, bizarrely, minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any amendments they wish to bring to these minutes or comments they wish to make or modifications, or are you happy to note them as a true record of the last meeting, which was on the 10th of September 2025? No, I'm seeing no hands raised. I'm presuming that that is, you are content to accept these. Thank you. Right, agenda item 4. Oh, hang on, agenda item 3. I've got a discrepancy between my two agendas. Right, agenda item 4, public speaking. We have no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency. Agenda item 6, confidential and exempt items. There are no confidential and exempt items for this agenda. Agenda item 7, people data report. And with that, I'm going to move over to Gemma Roberts to present her report. Thank you, Gemma.
Press the right button. Morning, everybody. Gemma Roberts, Assistant Director of People and Performance. So first report today from myself is the People Data Report, updating you since the last reporting period. So this report recovers data up to the end of November, and a couple of areas to note for the committee. So headcount has increased, moving from 556 to 565, and the FTE has gone from 519.35 to 529.34. In relation to market supplements, the number of posts in receipt of market supplements have remained the same with 10 posts, but due to recruitment, there is an additional person in receipt of a market supplement. So the total number of employees in receipt of a market supplement is 22, and the annual review that takes place for market supplements is currently happening. In relation to vacancy numbers, they currently stand at 67, which represents an increase of 1 since the last reporting period. As mentioned in previous reports and in the last committee, we have been transitioning to a new vacancy process to ensure effective budget monitoring and HR data. And following conclusion of that piece of work, we're just at the end stages of that. That number should decrease, and then moving forward, we will have that new process embedded, and that then should be reflective in future reporting periods. In relation to vacancies, agency, we currently have 29 posts filled with agency staff, and this represents an increase of 2 from the last reporting period. And total turnover at this stage is at 8.255%, with a projected year end of 12.82%. In terms of voluntary turnover, this currently stands at 6.95% to the point of November, again with a projected year end of 10.42%. Retirement accounts for 1/4 of those leaving, so that indicates that for us succession planning is important, and 27% when they've left have indicated that it's for career move reasons. So again, this is pointing to us to a need that people have development aspirations, and that's the reason for leaving. In terms of absence data, there has been a slight change in how we're reporting that since the last period. So following benchmarking and to be in line with other South West councils, we've removed phased returns from our reporting period. So this is where someone becomes fit for work, but due to the reason for absence or the length of absence, they need to just transition and phase themselves back into the workplace. So they are fit to return at the start of that period. So given that, we have removed that from our absence figures. In terms of projected year-end absence figures, we're currently at 10.6 days lost per FTE, and work-related stress is the leading cause for long-term absence. If we remove long-term absence from our figures, that would result in 5.71 days lost per FTE. And as part of the work that's happening around absence, we're looking at targeted interventions, and we already have in place wellbeing support, management training and case management for complex absence cases. In addition to this, we've revisited the frequency of our stress-related training so that it features as part of mandatory training plans for all staff members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Now, does anybody have any questions for Gemma? Tim, Councillor Dumper.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Gemma, I was just thinking about the removal of the phased return people. I can quite see why that's a good move, but on the other hand, if you have quite a number of people on phased returns, you are losing quite a few hours of working time, if you like, and I just wondered whether there was any way of sort of keeping those figures, but on the side, as it were, rather than as part of your central reporting data.
Thank you, Tim. Gemma, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, so we could look at that. We do generally have low numbers of phase returns, so the only thing we would have to be mindful of in terms of reporting is that being able to identify the people that it relates to. But I can certainly look at that for the next reporting period to see how that works.
Does anybody have any more questions? John, Councillor Heath, please.
Is that working?
It's on, yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. Gemma, with regarding to phase returns, is that open to interpretation from officers, senior officers like line managers, or is there kind of a plan? Is there a general principle to that? Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there is guidelines in terms of phase returns, so they shouldn't be for more than generally 4 weeks, maximum 6 weeks. Where a phased return is in place, we will often get advice from our occupational health provider as well to inform that. And the manager will seek advice from HR in any cases of phased return, so they have that support, and we obviously support in ensuring that consistency across the organisation in terms of how it's applied.
Does anybody have any more questions for Yehudi? Councillor Levine, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I take you to all the lovely diagrams on the appendix?
Is the second document.
What I see is, for example, on page 14, there's a voluntary turnover by percentage, two enormous blue lines sticking out, and there are not really many levers, it's just that the section is small, so a couple of levers make an enormous difference. I also noticed, for example, at the following page that there are an awful lot of levers in place. So what really worries me is, I know that in place there are a lot of people, but it is a conglomerate of services, so a couple of people living in one service doesn't make an enormous difference to the whole, but it does make a big difference to the service itself. What I'm not quite sure is, does the succession, whatever it's called, the policy, cover filling up all the lost expertise of the people who leave, especially in the small sections?
Gemma, I don't know if that's a question you can answer. Maybe can you? Okay, go for it.
Okay, so in terms of succession planning, we don't have a policy per se, but this is part of what our HR business partners work with their services with directors, assistant directors, and team managers to look at if there are issues where we need to factor in succession planning. Obviously, we do have, within the Place Directorate, we have street scene, and we know that in that area we do have an ageing workforce, so retirement and things, and that is something we are looking at in that area in terms of how we succession plan, but also across the organisation. I know in our executive leadership team meetings, there has been a focus on ensuring that resilience across the organisation, and ensuring that where we have those pockets of people that have that experience, that level of experience, we're getting that out of them before they go and passing that on to others, and ensuring we've got things written down and guidance and those sorts of things. So that's something that we don't have a policy per se, but we do across the organisation as part of our workforce planning and succession planning process.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Does anybody have any more questions for Gemma? Because I have one question otherwise. Okay, I'm going to ask my question. So thank you for pulling out the long-term sickness absence. That's something that has been bothering me for a long time, because a few individuals can skew the figures quite a lot. Is there an industry standard we could benchmark that against? Do other organisations, do other local authorities do this as well, in order to sort of get a better idea of what's going on with their workforce?
So do other industries remove the long-term absence? Yeah, okay. So from a benchmark point of view, generally the data is just your absence figures as a whole. So it's not removing long-term absence. That's what we see when we look on Infinistats, which is a benchmarking tool for local authorities, but also if we benchmark with like CIPD, which is HR for HR professionals, those sort of areas, you will see it as a full figure per FTE. But I think, as we've talked about, I believe in this committee previously, and part of the reason we started reporting in that way is just to show, obviously, the impact that does have on the figures, per employee across the organisation. So we do have the benchmark figure for the whole figure in the report, but I don't have any benchmarking where organisations have taken the long-term absence out of it.
Thank you. And I suppose as a corollary to that, I'm mindful that something that is within our gift as an elected body is the fact that a lot of the absence is stress-related, and that is something that we do need to bear in mind, because my original thought was that the long-term absence might be more physical health problems, but if it's stress-related, then that's something we should be looking at as an organisation, and we need to be mindful that long-term absence is not just unfortunate, it's also stuff that we can act on. So thank you very much for doing that, but it's also good to know that it is a large part of it is stress related, because that is something that we should be mindful of and act on as a body. John, Councillor Loudon, please.
a number of points. I think we need to be careful. I think when you look at the heading of stress, anxiety, fatigue, these are headings. And if I put down that I'm off work due to stress, is that extreme stress, or is it just I'm feeling, I'm feeling under pressure today? So it's down to interpretation. So I think we just need to be slightly careful. At the same time, not complacent for the point you've just made there, Chair. A couple of points coming out of what colleagues have raised. I take Councillor Levine's point about we have 4 directorates and therefore place is an amalgam of very different people, different roles. The difficulty for us, our job is to look in the broadest sense at what's going on in the organisation and be reassured that the systems, processes and management actions are supporting a positive workplace culture and efficient and effective delivery of services. And I think what this is meant to do is to give you a flavour rather than to be able to say, well, for example, in street scene, we're losing 4 here, 5 there, for example. And I don't know if those numbers are correct. So I take that. And the final point is, and I think it's got to be a positive, because I think what Gemma's said to us, that if I took the number down correctly, that if you strip out phased returns, and phased returns should be that you're on the way up, having gone down, having been off work, you go down, as it were. A phased return is then on the up in order to get you back to work. So stripping that out of the numbers, to have 5.71 FTE on 5.71 days. Sorry, I've written it down in my book incorrectly. 5.71 days per FTE per annum absence is below the LGA's, Local Government Association's, expectation that the average across local government is around 8 to 9 days per annum. So I think that shows a much more healthy picture than what we were looking at previously.
Thank you, John. I don't think there's anything you need to answer in there, but it's more of a statement than a question, John, wasn't
Sorry,
it?
yes, it was, Chair.
So Councillor Arnott, please. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly. Yes, and I think building on Councillor Loudon's points there, the top 3 reasons for absence in the short term are the kind of things we might all have today. Cold, flu, stomach, kidney, liver digestion, headaches, migraines, basically. That does account for an awful lot. And although one's always very sad for anybody who's got a headache, particularly, of course, oneself, I don't, that's par for the course. And I welcome Councillor Loudon giving that a bit of detail in relation to benchmarking this by LGA standards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. John, Councillor Heath, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just picking up from what John Loudon has said regarding stress, and please forgive me if this is already in place, but are there subdivisions? For instance, what comes to my mind is there might be workload pressures, there might be actually, sadly, bullying and harassment, there might be illness, and there might be personal issues. I just wondered whether that is sort of examined and interpreted through the system. Thanks.
Gemma, I don't know if is that something you can answer? Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so in terms of how we report on the system, so that is split out, so from work and personal. So that is split out at that sort of high level in terms of how we record it in the system. But then obviously through the absence process and that supporting the person back to work, there would obviously be more detailed conversations with the manager. And then if it became sort of long term or there was support needed, then HR would become involved to support that as well. So then we would be understanding a bit more around reasons for that. This does all link in then with sort of following reports, which is the people strategy, and then also the staff survey, and what we want to do there to understand a bit more of what's going on behind some things. So picking up some of the points that you mentioned around workload and things like that, and that having an impact. So that wider piece that we're doing across the organisation, which we'll pick up in the next reports.
Thank you. I think probably going to wrap that up. I think everybody's had a chance to ask Gemma what they wanted. Thank you very much for that report, Gemma. We're going to move on to agenda item 8, which is the people strategy update, and seamlessly back to Gemma.
Okay, thank you. Pastel Committee feels like a bit like the Gemma show. So in terms of the people strategy, I'm really excited to update you on progress that we've made with the people strategy, people focused. It launched in November with an action plan sat behind it, which went live in December. Development of the strategy, I talked about this, sort of the early stages of the strategy at the last personnel committee, but development of the strategy was over a period of time that followed engagement with staff through the staff survey, focus groups, and collection of information through staff suggestion schemes, exit interviews, and then other sort of general feedback that we were receiving from staff. So the strategy sets out clear ambition under 3 themes. The themes are connect, grow and thrive. And copies of the strategy have been placed on committee tables for you to look at. So we've used the strategy as an opportunity to bring one team at East Devon to life, bringing it together through the organisation to ensure we're providing the best possible outcomes for our communities and how we do that collectively as an organisation. So as part of this, we've got supporting elements which have included a refresh of our organisational behaviours, the introduction of a management charter, and also a customer charter. And these are all designed to reinforce and ensure understanding of expectations and also support high quality service delivery. So we launched the strategy in November, as I say, and we had a number of engagement activities and also launched a new One Team East Devon hub. And this is something that can evolve over time and support engagement and understanding of the strategy and the associated actions. And also is a great place for us to update on progress and what's happening. So as part of this, we also want to look at how we engage with members with some of this activity. And we have started doing things such as people profiles, which was feedback from staff that we don't always know other people in the organisation from other services and what they do. And also on the hub, we're sharing staff stories, and we want to look at then how we integrate that into members' newsletters so that you're seeing some of that as well. So a number of things have happened since the launch, one of which is the focusing on action, which is the associated action plan, and that provides a practical framework for delivering the strategy. And some of the key actions have just been highlighted in the report submitted. So that includes for Connect, we're looking to establish a staff-led group, which will champion how we connect, ensuring we're hearing from staff how they want to do that, what works for them and what's needed. Developing a communication and engagement plan to ensure consistent messaging. In relation to Grow, we're looking to launch a mentoring programme which has come through strongly from staff, both in the staff suggestion scheme but also the staff survey, that's something they're looking for, and that links back to what I was talking about in terms of the people data, and the reason for people leaving is, can sometimes be in relation to career development. So looking at how as an organisation we're supporting and addressing that in a way that works for our people. Also reviewing our recruitment and induction process to assure that we attract and retain our talent. And then creating a managers hub within the One Team East Devon hub with resources and guidance. So it's really easy for managers to find relevant information and access the support that they need. And then in relation to Thrive, we have development of equality, diversity and inclusion training programme aimed at raising and enhancing awareness across the organisation, refreshing our approach to one-to-ones and performance reviews to ensure it aligns with the new strategies, the strategy and the themes. And then also we've begun the rollout of change and resilience workshops across the organisation. So we did a pilot in December, and we're just collating that feedback to then roll that out across the organisation. So just to finish, as part of this, we're mindful that local government reorganisation is on the minds of all of our staff, and we hope that the strategy will provide an anchor over the next couple of years to demonstrate our support and commitment and also focus to our people. And with local government reorganisation, you know, a lot of that is out of our control, but the strategy supports us in taking back some of that control to support our staff to be in the best possible place for the next steps within that process. So the committee report recommends to note the successful launch of the people strategy, endorse the ongoing implementation of the strategy and key action, and support continued engagement and communication to embed the strategy across the organisation. Thank you.
Thanks, Gemma. Okay, questions. Paul, Councillor Arnott, please.
Not really a question, if I'm honest. I was going to propose...
How long is it going to be?
I was going to propose the recommendation.
Okay, good. We have a recommendation. We have a proposal. That's great. Fantastic. Does anybody want to ask Gemma any questions? Kevin Bligan.
Would you like to second the proposal?
Fantastic. We've got a proposed and seconded proposal, which is fantastic. Does anybody want to ask any questions? Yehudi, Councillor Levine.
On page 18, there are two things. You're talking about the SLT floor walks and depot visits. Was that motivated by the staff survey, which is the next point? Because that is something that the staff were not terribly happy about. And secondly, I really think it's very good that you've got coffee, cake and connect sessions, because when I was working in a slightly bigger building than that, we had one central coffee room where we all congregated and people really exchanged ideas. And then management came and decided that it was inefficient because everybody had to come from the 4th floor down to the 1st floor to get coffee. So they installed coffee machines on every floor, and that broke up the fabric of the organization. So I think it is really extremely good that you are promoting staff gatherings informally around a coffee machine.
Councillor Levine preempted my question, which is fantastic. Gemma, coffee, cake and chat, essentially. We think it's a good idea. I would just say Trojan Room coffee machine. It's great. A coffee pot that spurred an extraordinary invention because people had to go across the building to get to it. So actually, good things can come from having to go a long way to get coffee, is all I'll say. Sorry, Gemma. Trojan Room coffee machine, my friend invented the webcam, so you keep an eye on the coffee pot.
I felt perhaps only you knew what you were saying there, Chair.
No, I think a lot of people know about the Trojan Room coffee machine. Okay, so...
Gemma and John, no criticism of you, Chair. I would perhaps enlarge on Councillor Levine's point.
I'm actually asking Gemma to answer the question, unless there's something...
we could set an example here by having coffee and cake in these meetings. But anyway.
Well, that is not a bad idea. And actually, Yehudi does sometimes bring cake. But it shouldn't always be on Yehudi. Sometimes I need to bring cake also. Gemma, sorry, can you remember the question?
I think so. So in terms of the floor walks and the SLT involvement, so yeah, that has come out of obviously what we've heard in the staff survey, and ensuring that visibility, which, as you say, is in the next report that we'll come on to. But that is about us sort of hearing what staff are saying and then looking at how we can address that. So yes, that has come up from there.
Tim, Councillor Dumper, please. Oh, sorry. John wanted to dive in before you. Sorry. So John first.
Just to build on what Councillor Levine was talking about, I think it's incredibly good practice that where you have depots, that you get out to the depots. it will be usually done by supervisors, lower level managers, but occasionally it is helpful to have more senior staff to go out. It's easier in a building like this where you have people almost captive, haven't you, in it. But equally, given the pressures of work, it is also easy for people to sit there at the desk, head down, you know, from morning through to evening. So it is good practice to get out there. Sometimes, though, I can see it from the other side where people think, okay, why are they turning up? What's going on? So you know, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. Just in terms of the coffee, cake, and connect sessions, I went along to one of those. I had neither coffee nor cake because they don't attract me particularly. So, but I did have the opportunity to sort of see what was going on and talk to a number of staff. So I think that was a good opportunity, well taken. The final thing I would say is that my understanding was that we were always going to have a refresh of the people strategy. It is something that I believe that Tracy, as chief executive, when she took over, I don't know, had this conversation with Paul the other day, about 21 months or so ago, roughly. You know, this was one of the things on her list to do, and I think it's an opportune moment for this to have come to a conclusion as we move into a period of great uncertainty, particularly for the staff, over the next couple of years. So I'm very pleased that we have got this. It's great to have the strategy set out as you have in front of you, but as I'm sure Gemma will accept, it is in the practice and the delivery of this that we will be able to see that we have done the right thing by staff, by the targets and the objectives we've got in the strategy.
Thanks, John. Tim, you had a question.
In actual fact, Kevin, did you have your hand up previously to me, or no?
Oh.
No. I must be hallucinating. I just wanted to ask, I mean, I think, you know, while absolutely backing what is written in this report and what we're doing, I just wondered how far because, you know, there's been good personnel practice and good management practice here in East Devon before, and I wondered whether, other than this floor walking that we've just been talking about, whether there are any other gaps, or whether this is sort of like an integrated reminder, partly because of local government review, to keep people's, you know, focus on it. Perhaps you could comment on that, Gemma.
Thanks, Gemma. Over to you.
Yeah, so I think, you know, in terms of the title and being people focused, that's absolutely what this is about. It's about bringing those things together and ensuring we've got something, as I said earlier, as that sort of anchor to hold us to, one, to hold us to account so we don't sort of lose sight of where we're going and what we want to be doing over the next couple of years to support our people. But, you know, to ensure that we don't lose sight of what we're doing well. So, you know, as you talk about as an organisation, there's a lot that's going well, and it's about bringing some of that to the forefront. And we talk about that in the strategy in terms of, for example, grow our own. So ensuring we're continuing what we're doing well as well. Yeah.
Keeping away from the negativity, emphasising the positivity. Now, I was thinking specifically in terms of investors in people. You know, this organisation has traditionally been an investor in people and should have been working on these ideas anyway. And good for you anyway. Thank you.
I think it's a sort of visible expression of the one team East Devon thing, isn't it? Actually gathering people together from all different levels of the organisation and getting their feedback. And also we believe in breaking down silos. So that is, you know, to have a silo between top and bottom was probably not very healthy for the organisation. So, you know, for me, it's moving in the right direction. I'm very happy with this. Does anybody have any more questions for Gemma, or shall we move to the vote on the recommendations? Okay. I don't think anybody has any more questions. So you've got 3 recommendations in front of you. If you are in favour of endorsing those 3 recommendations, noting the ones that need to be noted, would you please raise your hand now? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, moving on not so swiftly to agenda item 9, which is the staff survey update, which we've already referred to, but it is obviously very germane to what we've just been talking about. But Gemma, would you like to present that report as well, please?
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, as has just been said, this is all very connected, you know, in terms of how it all feeds into each other. But last year we conducted a staff survey and had a response rate of 60%. The report presented today just provides a summary of that survey and the results, and details the actions that we've been taking as a result of what we've heard. So the staff survey is an important element for us in hearing employee voice and understanding what our employees are saying to us, what they need from us, and how they're feeling, and it gives a different channel for them to express their voice and ensure that they're heard, given that the survey is anonymised, so it allows people that maybe don't want to come forward in other ways, such as staff suggestion scheme, to have that voice, so we can ensure we're hearing from all employees. So in relation to the results, we achieved an engagement rating of 63%, and we've identified 5 areas that are most impacting on engagement. And in addition to this, the report provides examples of what's going well. So the headlines for that are teamwork and management support, work-life balance and flexibility, and finding work meaningful and fulfilling. And then some areas within the report demonstrate where we require improvement. So as we've referred to already this morning, so leadership visibility, and then also communication, workload and capacity, and bullying and harassment concerns. So within the report, we've summarised a number of actions that have been taken to date. So one of which is the launch of the people strategy and associated action plan. So the action plan that has been published clearly highlights where particular actions are as a result of direct feedback from the staff survey. So the senior leadership team consideration and leadership commitments. So the senior leadership team have spent time considering the results of the survey and looking at how we address areas of improvement to ensuring we maintain, and also ensuring we maintain what's going well. So as part of this, we introduced leadership commitments to each theme in the people strategy. So within the strategy, you'll see that for each one, there is also a leadership commitment that sits behind that. And SLT have also made individual pledges, which we've published on the hub, for how they're going to ensure they sort of bring the strategy to life and how they're meeting those commitments. In terms of directorate-specific actions, so alongside the corporate actions, each directorate have gone away and looked at what the survey's saying for them, because there are some sort of differences, obviously, in areas where particular directorates need to focus. And each directorate have identified 3 priorities, which are detailed in Appendix 1 of the report. And action plans are being developed and will be communicated at a directorate level in February. And then also just to mention in terms of bullying and harassment, so some action that's already been taken. We've changed the frequency of our training in this area to ensure that there's a more frequent requirement for staff to do that. And we've also introduced new preventing sexual harassment in the workplace training. We do want to do some further work in this area, so we want to understand more of what's sitting behind the results on this one. So the plan is to go out to staff and ask those questions to understand that a bit more and understand how it's being experienced, in what way, etc. And then to mention just workload and capacity, again, which we have touched on this morning. So directorate plans for the coming year and have now been pulled together. And as part of that process, there was very much a focus on resource and capacity within directorates to complete the work, and work took place with Cabinet to ensure we agree what those organisational priorities are. Again, similar to bullying harassment, this is an area where we want to understand a bit more of what's going on behind this for people. So speaking to staff to understand where the workload pressures are coming from, do they have views on what could be done in those areas? And directorate level senior leaders are taking a more considered approach to resourcing requirements when we're looking at activity and work that we need to do. So finally, just to touch on the monitoring and evaluation of this work. So as previously mentioned, people focused has a key element in ensuring that action is taken as a result of the staff survey. And as part of the strategy, we have measures of impact for each theme, and there'll be ongoing monitoring, evaluation and reporting process. We also now have a new performance manager that started, which is great news. And I'm looking to them to get support with oversight and sort of a critical friend approach to how we measure the impact of the strategy and the performance of it. So we plan to do follow-up surveys to understand more, as I say, and there'll be shorter surveys, but we also are now committed to doing annual staff surveys for staff so we can track how staff are feeling. So this is ongoing and results and improvements will be a gradual process, but we hope that sort of the framework that we've put in place around this work will ensure ongoing progress and ensure the desired outcomes. And again, as we've talked about, ensure that focus and, you know, where are we going? We understand where we're going with this. And the recommendations for this report ask that the committee note the findings and acknowledge action being taken based on employee voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Right, questions for Gemma or short comments? Councillor Arnott, Paul, please, and then Councillor Heath. Yeah, you pipped him to the post.
Oh, I feel bad about that. Sorry, Sean.
I think you're virtually simultaneous,
We're both
but you
very
were definitely
quick
first.
for large men, as they say. So, building upon Councillor Loudon's comments on the previous item, I think it's great to see that the leaders in the organisation have, through this, recognised, you know, what they need to do next, particularly around the thing of visibility. I'd want to put in a kind of element of high praise here, though, for the organisation. I think it's really important. Councillor Loudon's always trying to remember when the Chief Executive took over, and it was June 2024. And in the preceding year, we had a tough time on this council. We lost a Chief Executive, we lost a Chief of Legal. We know what that was about. And we've moved on. We've created really quite a new role in housing with extraordinary outcomes in housing. We created the new role in place as well, a new Chief Executive. And no sooner as the new Chief Executive get her feet under the desk, then government throw local government reorganisation at the organisation. So those of us who've been in Cabinet have been privileged to see the proposed reorganisation structures shared with us for feedback as it's gone along. And although, of course, you can see that the staff, this has been stressful, this time of change, I would just want to praise what is effectively, apart from the 151, an entirely new senior manager in the last 2 years, for being in the place that we're in. And my reading of the sort of, what you might call the negatives here are, you don't want them, you want to address them to a certain extent that they're to be expected. But I really relish that in Appendix 1, the leaders of all those teams are thinking, well, this is what we now need to do now to build on the progress so far. But in terms of recognising how fast the organisation has changed itself, I would only wish to offer the highest praise to all the employees of the council from top to bottom. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. It does feel like they are doing extraordinary work in extraordinary and unprecedented circumstances. and to change an entire organisational culture whilst everything else is going on is just amazing. And I think I completely concur with Councillor Arnott about that. Councillor Heath, you're up. Over to you, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to raise really, because I didn't see it in this document, the frequency of supervision and team meetings, because obviously supervision can run into formal or informal, and whether they're, as in my profession, you know, a supervision was monthly, recorded, and was signed off by both the supervisor and the supervisee, and I just sort of want some illustration of how that works within this organisation. Thanks.
Is that something you can answer? Gemma, yeah, please go for it then.
So I referred to one of the areas in the people strategy that we want to look at is our one-to-one process. So we have one at the moment. We have a form that should be completed as part of that process and signed off, as you say, by the member of staff and also the manager to agree as a true record. And that covers things such as workload, well-being, learning and development, those sorts of things. And managers are responsible at a local level for doing those on a regular basis. The recommendation would be sort of minimum of 6 weeks, but it is up to the manager and the employee to determine what works for them and what is best in the environment that they're working in and how they want to work together. So that's the process in place at the moment.
Thanks, Gemma. Are there any more questions? Yehudi, Councillor Levine, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it really is gratifying to see that 2/3 of the staff believe that they have opportunities to learn and grow professionally. I think it's really an important part of our people strategy. The only slight thing that I've got worried about is there's a question about the organisation cares about my well-being, and a sizable minority have said no or reasonable or slight negative. What I think I've missed is, are there any actions being taken about that, or what possible actions can be taken about that?
Thanks, Yehudi. Gemma, go for it.
So I think that is definitely something that we've picked up on as well in terms of, and what's interesting in terms of if people feel supported by their manager and if their manager supports their wellbeing, that was really high. So there is something about that view of how the organisation is supporting wellbeing. So as part of the people strategy, there's a number of actions within that we would look to support that. But also in terms of the creation of the One Team East Devon hub that I talked about, there is a issue at the moment, I know for myself when I joined, in terms of being able to find what is available, so how much we offer as a council to our staff. Because at the moment it's in various different places. So that is a key action that in quarter one, but may have been maybe quarter this year, quarter four, what we're doing is pulling together all of those elements, so that wellbeing support, so that people can easily access that and see it. And I think that will have a real improvement for staff in understanding what's available, but also for managers then, obviously they have, received really good feedback in terms of the survey, but also supports them in going, as an organisation, this is what's offered and this is how I then can support my staff in doing that. I think also getting behind things like workload to understand if that's having an impact on, is there those links between responses to that question. So understanding more about that hopefully then feeds into all of that.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Yehudi. Does anybody have any more questions? Okay, so hang on. Kevin first and then Tim, please, in that order.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is more of an observation, I suppose, than a question, but under the point 2.3, which is the areas for improvement, the 34% agreement that leaders are visible and approachable is quite a worryingly low number. This is just a personal view, but I'm always very suspicious of senior management away days as an instrument, as a way of doing things. in businesses that I have worked at in the past, when these things were organised, there was always a deal of suspicion amongst the staff that they were up to no good. Quite apart from the cost, of course. And for me, you know, we've got lots of office space in here. Why do they need to be off premise to have these discussions? Not sure about that. And the only other comment I've got is the very last comment, which is making sure we don't generate survey fatigue. Very good point. Wish the council as a whole would learn that that's a thing, and that we would stop doing that sort of thing to our residents as well. There we go.
That sounds like a personal, a cry from the heart, Kevin. Right. So I don't think there was anything really for Gemma to, is there anything you'd like to address in that? Okay, go for it then.
So just to say, in terms of the away day, it was at Exmouth Town Hall, so it was still on our premises. So we didn't, it wasn't a away day.
Oh dear, Kevin.
Fair
It
enough.
wasn't a day a day at the seaside. Right, Tim, over to you, please.
It's been mentioned elsewhere today about more involvement of councillors. Now, I mean, I know, as having worked as a local government officer in the past, I know that there can be among staff a bit of a suspicion of the role of councillors and all the rest of it. And I wondered whether we can build in to this process somewhere, bringing more, and you know, I speak as a backbench councillor here. There was a very good example of this actually happened a few months ago via HRB. And what happened was there was a big award coming, or rating, a good rating from the inspection body. And we were all invited in with all the staff from the various housing units. And I think that's sort of a template that can be used where this informality between councillors and staff can also develop.
I suppose it's a question of breaking down silos again, isn't it? But without us poking our beaks under operational bonnets where we really shouldn't be. And I suspect that this is probably, as a council body, this is as far as we should really be going in terms of involving ourselves in the actual day-to-day management of staff.
But equally, there are ideas here among councillors that can inform day-to-day management.
Absolutely.
And people draw that in as if by osmosis.
But I was also just thinking, as you were saying that there's one thing that the officers are probably not short of, and that's members' voices, because we're all quite good at speaking. And we're not very shy about keeping our opinions to ourselves usually. Gemma, is there anything that you can answer from what Tim said? And then, John, do you want to jump in instead of Gemma then?
Do you want me to come in first? Perhaps if I come in first, because I think it's more
Okay.
a political response rather than operational. I mean, I think we do have to be careful how we balance this. This committee is not, our remit is not to become operational. Ours is, as I said earlier on, we've got an overview. We have a helicopter approach to this. Equally, we have Chief Executive, who's Head of Paid Services. You'll be fully aware, Tim, and it's her responsibility for staffing matters. However, we do have a responsibility. And I think the discussions that go on here in front of Gemma, we have usually have the monitoring officer as well. And occasionally, we have the Chief Executive pops in. So the discussions we have in here do get heard by officers, and like everything else, they'll filter it in the way they see is most appropriate. But equally, I would say to you, you know, all members have the right and responsibility to submit comments, their thoughts. If you want to send them to me as a portfolio holder, I'm very happy to receive them. You know, you've got chair of this committee if it's to the operation of this committee. And ultimately, and I don't want to encourage people to inundate officers, but, you know, there is the opportunity through the member inquiry form to you know, put a feedback in, which can then get picked up by the appropriate officers. So I think there's a number of ways we can do that.
Thanks, John. Is there anything residual that's non-political that you want to talk about? No, okay, that's fine. Okay, does anybody have any more questions or comments for Gemma's report, or are we happy to note the contents? Well, hang on, was there a vote on it? It was to note the update, so we don't need to vote on that, do we? Okay, I think we've probably done this one. So let's move on to agenda item 10, which is the corporate health and safety policy update. And that unusually does not come from Gemma, that comes from Matt, who is over there. Over to you, Matt. Can you please present your report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. This is a relatively brief report, but about quite an important piece of work. The corporate health and safety policy has been in place for a number of years, but does need a regular update, which is what this is. So we've carried out a kind of a root and branch update of the policy. Personnel committee have been delegated by the council to approve that policy. So the recommendation in front of you today is to approve that updated policy. So the Health and Safety at Work Act does impose a duty on employers to provide prepare and, as it often may be appropriate, revise a written statement of general policy and to set out arrangements for carrying out that policy. So the document that's given in Appendix 1 as a draft is the latest version of that. So we've had one in place for a number of years. There was a little while since we had the last review, as you'll see, and it's important that the document reflects the structure. And as we know, as we've already noted today, there's been quite a lot of changes in the council, so we've made sure we've updated it. So the key changes that we've made to the policy are reflecting the current structure. We've updated and clarified some of the wording. Some of the wording was a bit confused previously. And we've also clarified some member responsibilities in there as well. So I'm happy to take any more detailed questions regarding the policy as we go forward. Just to point out, it's not the meat on the bones. This is the bones. It sets out the overall approach to health and safety within the organisation. It doesn't go into detail about specific areas of health and safety law. That lies outside of this policy within specific arrangements. So as I say, Chair, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So does anybody have any questions about this skeleton? Councillor Loudon. John, please.
Slightly unnerving, thank you, Matt, slightly unnerving to hear the AD responsible for environmental health talking about skeletons
And
here.
bones. Oh, you said meat and bones.
Well, indeed. So, yes. I feared for a moment that he was talking about the wrong policy there, but no, I jest. So what Matt has put before us is, as he says, it's just updating what we already have. I think and hope that members recognise that over the last 12, 18 months or so, Matt has been here before bringing various staff health and safety issues to us. And I think what this demonstrates is very much a focus within the management structures on staff health and safety issues, which I think we need to note and recognise. And I would encourage colleagues, probably by moving the recommendation, that we adopt the revised set of bones, as Matt has said. And obviously, at the end of the day, you can have a policy, you can have all the policies you like, but it is actually how you operate within and around and deliver the policies that are key. So I move, Chair.
Thank you. I don't think you can, I need a seconder as well, I think, don't I? Okay, so Councillor Levine, are you seconding? Okay, fantastic. As Matt's explained, this is a very high-level document which brings us more in line with LGA standards, I believe. So yeah, there's no sense in discussing minutiae of it. So, but does anybody have any very broad questions about any of it for Matt? Okay. Are you happy to vote on it? All right. So we have a proposer and a seconder. If you are in favour of accepting this draft policy, would you please raise your hand now? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, thank you very much for attending, Matt. Very short gig after all. Thank you very much for being here, Gemma. And thank you, Mel, for being online somewhere in the ether. It's a shame we didn't get to test that, actually.
She's definitely there, Chair.
She's definitely still there.
Before you close, I promise you she is. We did miss apologies. Are you happy for me to just include those now?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, please.
For the
Please, can we have
record?
the apologies?
So we have received apologies who can't be here for this morning's meeting from councillors Aurora Bailey, Brian Bailey, Violet Bonetta, Jenny Brown and Nick Hookway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Right, thank you very much for being here, everybody, and thank you for everybody who's attending online, including Mel, who is attending hybridly. Is that an adjective? Is that an adverb? By hybrid means. And I hope, Mel, that if there's any feedback about how the hybrid's working, you'll feed it back, because it's a very exciting development, really, to be able to attend meetings remotely if one's presence is not absolutely required. Well, Councillor Barlow, you've missed it. Okay, so we're about to close the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, and a safe trip home. Goodbye.